views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
When we got here, the lady said 5 hours. It's, you know what I mean? So I'd say the heat was the biggest complaint.
Tonight on Politics Now, long lines and frustrated voters in Nevada's primary, how 6-hour waits were created and what's going to change for November.
There's 2 issues that people care about, feeling safe and ultimately getting our economy back on its feet.
We break down the new faces you'll see on the Clark County Commission, the congressional races, and some of the interesting down-ballot races. Plus,
so he puts out false allegations defaming me on city letterhead. I don't know. I think that's pretty wrong.
Las Vegas Mayor Pro Tem Michelle Fiore once again at the center of controversy. The statements she's alleged to have said and her strong response.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
A primary election with mail-in balloting, still long lines as Nevada turned out for the primary. Thank you for joining us here. I'm John Langler. Now, some people waited as long as 7 hours to vote in the primary. 3 open locations for in-person voting in Clark County all saw much bigger turnout than expected.
Thought maybe 1 hour most. I would never have even came out, to be honest, if I knew it would be 5 hours, and I saw a lot of people just leaving and giving up halfway through. It was really demoralizing.
Why do it? Why still wait?
Because it's time for a change. We need a change, and I'm here to make sure that this change is happening.
So the primary was all mail-in because of the coronavirus pandemic. But on Election Day, there were 3 locations open in Clark County. And there, people could register and have their ballot printed out. Well, thousands showed up, much more than Clark County expected. Registrar of Voters Joe Gloria says they did the best they could with the situation.
It's unacceptable, the length of the lines that we had voters. We thank voters for their patience, and we thank our staff for the diligence they put in processing those voters. We will definitely make it better for the general election.
A part of the reason for the slow going was all the cleaning that was done after voters were inside and they were not wearing protective gear. Now, for the general election in November, Gloria says the state will move back to the way Nevada normally votes in person. Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto tweeted the long wait times for the primary is exactly why she supported a Democratic lawsuit to expand from more than 1 in-person polling location. Now, as those long lines indicate, turnout was very good for a race with no governor, no president, or senator on the ticket. Turnout statewide, 27%, about 436,000 voters. Now, that could go up as more ballots postmarked by Tuesday start to come in. Here in Clark County, 258,672 ballots have been returned for a turnout of 22.7% so far. So let's talk about some of the big races. Now, again, bear in mind these are not going to be final results. So far, only about 300,000 votes have been counted of the 430,000 plus that have been received. We're going to have some unofficial final results on Tuesday. The official results are next Friday. Nevada's 3 Democratic incumbent members of Congress appear to be cruising to easy wins in their primary. So let's take a look at who they'll face in the general election. In Congressional District 3, Susie Lee has a big lead in her Democratic primary. And it looks like she'll face former pro wrestler and businessman Dan Rodheimer. He has key endorsements from House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and the NRA. He has a big lead in the Republican primary over former State Treasurer Dan Schwartz. Here's what Lee said about the general election.
I think that the numbers coming out of Congressional District 3 are showing a decent amount of turnout in the early the early return votes. So I'm excited. I think voters are energized to turn out in this election, and November is going to be the same. We're going to see a good turnout, and that's exactly what we're going to need.
In Congressional District 4, incumbent Stephen Horsford has a healthy lead over his Democratic challenger. And at this point, it looks like he's going to face former Assemblyman Jim Marchant. He has a lead over Sam Peters and Lisa Song Sutton. Here is what Horsford and Song Sutton said about the race on election night.
The number one issue that people still talk to me about is health care, the cost of health care. Obviously, the pandemic has made that even worse. We have people who are still struggling to pay for their prescription drug that they need to stay well.
This district in particular, we have a lot of veterans and a lot of military families. We have Nellis Air Force Base, Creech Air Force Base, and the Hawthorne Military Depot. Myself, I come from a military family. My father is a Vietnam veteran, and so my emphasis would certainly be on vets and their VA care.
All right, let's now look at a few Nevada legislative races. Republicans trying to cut into the overwhelming Democratic majority. The race for Nevada Senate District 7 pits Assembly members Ellen Spiegel and Richard Carrillo against former Democratic Party Chair Roberta Lang. Lang had the endorsement of Harry Reid and the Culinary Union, but as you see there, doesn't appear to be enough. While it looks like Ellen Spiegel will pick up that seat, there are still a lot of votes to count. This seat was previously held by a Democrat. A Republican incumbent is going down in this assembly primary. Looks like Chris Edwards is going to lose to Annie Black, who sits on the Mesquite City Council. The closest race is in the Democratic Assembly District 20 primary. Now, this is the seat Spiegel is leaving. David Orentlicker she got a slight lead on Emily Smith. He's a law professor over at UNLV and a physician. Smith is CEO of the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation and a founder of the Nevada Blind School. The other big races were for the 2 open Clark County Commission seats, and it looks like those will be filled by some familiar faces. Clark County Commission District C, that seat being vacated by Larry Brown. The top Democrat there will face Stavros Anthony, who's on the Las Vegas City Council, in the general election. Right now, it's Ross Miller, former Secretary of State, who leads that race. In second is former Dina Titus aide Hunter Kane.
The model's changed, obviously, but the messaging is pretty clear. I think it's obvious that there's really only two things that people care about. One, they want to feel safe, and we're seeing the impact of how unsafe people are feeling. We've got to get order restored here, and we've got to make some serious revisions to the criminal justice system, and make sure that we fix what's wrong here. And second, we've got to get people back to work.
I'm not just running for Clark County Commission C. I'm running to have this be the most diverse commission in history. So I'm running to be the very first openly LGBTQ candidate in Clark County's history, the first African American candidate for District C. I'll be the very first licensed foster parent on the Clark County Commission, and then I'll be the very first veteran to serve on the commission in nearly 30 years. So it's a lot of diversity that I'm hoping to bring there and to help a lot of underserved communities.
Again, Kane trailing Miller at this point. Now, Clark County Commission District D, that seat is being left by Lawrence Weekly. He is being term limited out. And it looks like that Weekly will be replaced by Assemblyman and State Party Chairman William McCurdy. Former State Senate Majority Leader Mo Dennis is trailing in second place. Here's McCurdy.
I think that racial equality and racial equity, if I may add, will be at the top of everyone's minds. George Floyd, rest in peace, has ignited a flame to generate change within not only our state, but within our country, as it relates to policing, as it relates to police accountability, and as it relates to our relationship with those who we entrust to take care of our needs in some of our most vulnerable times.
All right, let's take a look now at some of the nonpartisan races on the primary ballot. Now, a quick explanation first of how those work. There are judicial races, the school board of trustees, the university regents we're talking about here. If a candidate wins more than 50% of this June vote, the candidate just wins the election. But in primary races where no candidate captures a majority of the votes, the top 2 finishers go on to November's general election. So, with that in mind, let's start with the Clark County School Board. Board President Lola Brooks right now looks like she's going to be in a runoff in November with Alexis Salt. Salt is a career teacher here in the Valley who is now out at Indian Springs High School. District A, it looks like a runoff between Teachers Union leader Lisa Guzman and former CCSD Administrator Liberty Levitt. In District B for CCSD, the board looks like a runoff between Katie Williams and Jeff Proffitt. Williams is a combat veteran and fitness instructor who supports President Trump. She's also made some controversial social media posts in the past. Proffitt is a manager at a local sheet metal company and used to work with CCSD's apprenticeship program. Now on to the judicial races. Just 2 incumbents appear to be unseated in those contests. District Court Judge Richard Scotty is behind, as you see there, in his race, but that does appear to be going into a runoff. Carrie Lynn Kearney is a defense attorney and leads at this point. In Family Court J, Rena Hughes will not even make the runoff for her own seat. Hughes was reprimanded by the state's Commission on Judicial Discipline. Scott McDonald leads. He's a private attorney. Deidre Butler is a deputy public defender. William Voy is on the cusp of retaining his seat in the primary. This is for a Family Court District or Department A. This was an interesting race because Cheryl Ann Wingate, who you see in second place, is Voy's sister-in-law. Gail Nathan in third place accused Wingate of getting into the race to help out Voy, and it looks like that strategy may have worked. Nevada starts to trim its budget.
I wish we weren't faced with this difficult situation, and I wish I didn't have to deliver this news.
Next on Politics Now, Governor Steve Sisolak announces budget cuts, furloughs, and layoffs for state employees. And the discussion of pardons for people with low-level marijuana convictions.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Nevada's budget shortfall is going to mean layoffs, furloughs, and a freeze on merit raises. Governor Steve Sisolak now projects the 2021 budget is going to have a $1.3 billion shortfall. The governor expects 50 layoffs in the next fiscal year at the state level. That's down from early projections as high as 450. 1 furlough day a month is in place potentially for all state employees starting in July. A freeze on merit salary increases as well is being considered. Governor Sisolak posted this message to state employees on YouTube.
Believe me, I wish we weren't faced with this difficult situation, and I wish I didn't have to deliver this news. But it's important that you hear the information from me. As you probably expect, after learning of our shortfall in fiscal year 2020, our anticipated budget deficit for fiscal year 2021 is even more severe.
Sisolak says, though, he is not touching employees' health insurance or retirement funds. Governor Sisolak also says now he will ask the Pardons Board to consider pardons for low-level marijuana convictions, specifically people convicted of possessing less than an ounce of pot. The governor says the people of Nevada have decided possessing small amounts of marijuana isn't a crime. A pardon would not overturn those convictions, but what it would do is restore rights like voting, running for office, and would allow those people to work in industries that a conviction would normally prevent. The Pardons Board meets next week, and it consists of Governor Sisolak, the justices on the state Supreme Court, and Attorney General Aaron Ford. Las Vegas Mayor Pro Tem Michelle Fiore is once again at the center of controversy and criticism. It started when the Clark County GOP asked her to apologize for a racially charged comment at last week's convention. Then Las Vegas City Councilman Cedric Creer sent that letter to Mayor Carolyn Goodman, asking for Fiore to be demoted from her leadership position. The letter mentions the convention and what was allegedly said. Creer wrote in part, while a recording is not surfaced, multiple witnesses quote the councilwoman as saying, quote, "I am a white woman and I should not lose my job because of their black blank word." The comments happened while Fiore was talking about affirmative action. At a press conference, Fiore apologized for offending anyone, then pointed out no video of the speech has actually surfaced.
I never, ever want to portray or have anyone believe that there is a racist bone in my body. Actions always speak more than words, and in my almost 50 years of being here, my actions are very clear on equality.
Fiore called Creer's letter 100% false. Councilman Creer told us a lot of people were upset by Fiore's alleged comments.
I've gotten a ton of calls and emails and texts from people in my community that are tired. They're just fed up with this type of rhetoric, and there's just no place for it.
Mayor Goodman says she is investigating the comments. The state Republican Party is also looking into them. Calls to defund the police. Coming up next here on Politics Now, what activists told the Congressional Black Caucus, what it actually means, we'll explain. Nevada's unemployment rate is the highest in the country and one of the highest the nation has ever seen. Our Washington correspondent, Alexandra Limon, reports now Congress is debating whether to extend extra unemployment benefits.
The extra $600 a week in benefits for unemployed Americans expires next month.
America is on the precipice of an eviction tsunami, particularly in the black community.
House Democrats passed a bill last month to extend the benefits through January. Oregon Senator Ron Wyden is pushing for the Senate to do the same. And Wyden says he doesn't understand why Republicans are pushing back.
Big corporations are getting trillions of dollars in support to weather this crisis. And now Senate Republicans are saying, well, we're just going to cut what the little guy gets.
The Trump administration is against the extension.
Our economy has turned the corner against the coronavirus.
Secretary of Labor Eugene Scalia says in May, the unemployment rate dropped nearly 1.5%. And Senate Republicans say that extending the extra $600 a week in benefits may do more harm than good.
Most recipients are being paid more on unemployment insurance than they were when working.
Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley says letters from small business owners say some employers can't find people to hire.
For $15 an hour, and we find that they're receiving equivalent of $20 an hour in unemployment benefits.
Some lawmakers urge a compromise, tying the unemployment benefits to each state's unemployment rate. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
We heard the Secretary of Labor say the economy's turned a corner. Can you expand a little bit on what that discussion was?
Yeah, the Secretary of Labor, Eugene Scalia, said that the economy is now improving, and the May jobs numbers showed that. He says that projections were that the unemployment rate was expected to grow by 5% last month, and instead we saw it fall by nearly 1.5%. And he says that's because states are starting to open up their economies again, and therefore jobs are starting to come back.
Well, is it possible Congress could do more, extend the extra unemployment payments moving forward?
Well, that's what Democrats want. They want to keep those $600 a week extra in unemployment benefits going through the end of the year. And the U.S. House already approved the HEROES Act, which is another really large economic package, which includes extending those $600 payments through the end of the year. But there's really, virtually no chance that the U.S. Senate is going to approve the HEROES Act. We heard the possibility of maybe a compromise bill being able to come from Congress that maybe lowers the amount or ties the amount to a state-specific unemployment rate so that it's different in every state. But it's going to be pretty tough for Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to call any bill to the floor to extend unemployment benefits because, again, Republicans say that in some cases, people are getting more in unemployment payments now than they would be if they return to work. So they say the federal government has essentially become a competitor for some of these businesses that are trying to open up again. And they say that in the long term, that's going to hurt the U.S. economy. That's why Republicans are pretty hesitant to call any such bill to the floor and vote on extending unemployment benefits once again.
So are we talking just hesitation or stalemate here between Congress and the Senate on this?
Right now, it sounds like more of a stalemate. Democrats have a really aggressive timeline. They want to try to pass some sort of expansion or extension by the July 4th holiday when Congress goes on a break. And then that way we would avoid the payments coming to an end at the end of July. But right now, we really have no indication from Republicans in the Senate that they plan to do that.
Me again. After hearing emotional testimony from George Floyd's brother, the Congressional Black Caucus held a hearing on Thursday to try and peel back the underlying issues that contributed to Floyd's death at the hands of Minneapolis police. Raquel Martin from our Washington, D.C. bureau explains.
There's a lot of trauma that's happening in the community right now.
Thursday, activists told the Congressional Black Caucus that Congress must dive deeper to stop the cycle of violence. Darius Ballinger mentors youth on the south side of Chicago.
When we spend 3 times as more on enforcement than we do on educating and supporting, then folks are feeling less than.
Ballinger and Black Lives Matter co-founder Alicia Garza also defended calls to defund the police.
Education has been defunded. Housing has been defunded, healthcare has been defunded. Everything that keeps our communities safe and secure with dignity has been defunded.
Democrats' Justice and Policing Act doesn't defund the police, but the CBC says it's clear minority communities need more resources.
It is personal for all of us. It is particularly personal for me.
Florida Democrat Val Demings is a former social worker and Orlando police chief.
That every time society fails, we put it on the cops to solve. Not enough mental health funding, let the cops handle it. Not enough drug treatment facilities, let the cops handle it.
While Democrats talk about defunding the police, Republicans talk about solutions.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy says Republicans will tackle the issues without hurting police.
No one should be judged by the color of their skin. And no one should be judged by the uniform they wear.
Republicans plan to unveil their plan to reform policing in the coming week. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
So far, Nevada politicians have not called to defund police. However, certainly a lot of protesters have made that discussion. Welcome back. Both state parties are holding their Democratic conventions here in Nevada this weekend, and they're both going to be held remotely. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar is going to be the keynote speaker for the Democrats. Former Senator Harry Reid and the congressional delegation are also speaking. The state convention is where they pick delegates for the presidential nominee and then vote on party platforms. Republicans are also going to have a virtual convention despite attempts to hold an actual one in person at Harrah's Lake Tahoe. The governor and the Gaming Control Board told them, though, they're still limited to just 50 people. State Party Chairman Michael McDonald and the executive board are still going to meet in Lake Tahoe, and then that's going to be broadcast all around the state. They already have voted to bind their delegates to President Donald Trump. We'll keep an eye on all of that, certainly moving forward. Thank you for watching Politics Now. We'll check up with you next week. Thanks for watching.